श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओं। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्वन्धकारो वैरुकारस्तन्निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनो भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयामदेवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्ट्वागुंसस्तनूभिः विषेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ प्रज्ञानां शुक्रतानैः स्थिरचरनिकरव्यापिविर्व्याप्य लोकान् भुक्त्वा भोगान् सविष्टान् पुनरभिधिषणोद्भासितान् कामजन्यान् त्वान् पीत्वा सर्वान् विशेषान् स्वपिति मधुरभुङ्मायया भोजयन्नः मायासङ्ख्यातुरीयं परममृतमजं ब्रह्म यत्तन्नतोऽस्मि। सुतो वा परतो वापि न किञ्चिद्वस्तु जायते सदसद्वापि न किञ्चिद्वस्तु जायते। Is there really a birth? Is there a real birth? Because birth implies pragabhava of that particular padartha. Pragabhava pratiyogi is the object which is born. Gata pragabhava pratiyogi is gata. So a total non-existence of that padartha is to be established for you to say that it is now existing and therefore it is born. So here the Karika is trying to look at if there is a birth, and if there is a birth, the birth is from what? Is it from a total non-existence, or is it born from itself, or is it born from something else, or is it a birth from a combination of existence and non-existence? So these are the vikalpas being looked at. Essentially, is there a karya karana really between two things? That is the whole idea. So now here, itascha na jayate kinchite yad jayamanam vastu swataha parataha ubhayataha va sat asat sadasadva na jayate na tasya kenachidapi prakarena janma sambhavati. So I think we saw this part briefly in the previous session, if I remember right. So let's quickly go through this. He first makes the he connects it to the previous verse, okay, saying therefore itascha. Why? Because in the previous one purvapara aparijnanam ajatehe paridipikam jayamanadhivai dharmat katam purvam na grihyate. okay, was said. So this Hetupala Sambandha was dismissed. Okay. Therefore, he says, Na jayate kinchite. So there is nothing which is actually born. Is a conclusion he makes connecting to the previous verse. Yet jayamanam vastu, if there is a birth, okay, then the born vastu swataha parataha ubhayato va na jayate. Is it cannot be said to be born from itself, because something cannot be born of itself, nor is it possible to be born of another thing, or both. Okay. So the birth means, first of all, you need to look at an entity. See, we cannot say a clay is born, a pot is born from clay. Then you have to establish pot as an entity, and that entity needs to be born from another entity called clay. Here there are no two entities. Okay. So we are not talking about that kind of a birth. The birth means you have to say a pot is born from a cat. Okay. Then you can say it is a birth. Okay. Or he can say a cat is born from another cat. Okay. So that kind of a birth also, if you analyze, actually there is no birth. Okay. The birth is only parinama. Everything is only a modification. There is no real birth. Okay. Even when a son is born from the father, but there also it is only parinama of the digested food. Okay. So that is why we can see there is really no birth. Anyway, so we will come to that. So it is swataha paratova. It cannot be born from itself, nor it can be born from something else. One thing cannot be a karana for another karya. Okay. Nor is it sadasad. Okay. Whether it is sat or asad can be said to be born. Yet jayamanam vastu swataha parataha ubayato va sad asad sadasadva na jayate. A sat cannot be born, nor a asat can be born, nor a sadasad together, which can be called as sadasat, is born. Okay. So now it just moved. Okay. Swataha parataha ubhayato va sad asad sadasadva, or a combination of sadasad together can ever be born. Oh, if I okay, so it make it full screen. Okay. न तस्य केनचिदपि प्रकारेण जन्म संभवति, न तावत् स्वयमेव अपरिनिष्पन्नात् स्वतः स्वरूपात् स्वयमेव जायते, यथा घटः तस्मादेव घटात्. Okay, this is a very straightforward statement that it cannot be born from itself. So a ghata swayameva aparinishpannat, okay, some entity, okay, is not possible to be born from itself. Swayameva aparinishpannat. Okay, so being born of itself is not swataha swarupat na swayameva jayate, yata gataha tasmadeva ghatat. Napi parataha anyasmad anyaha yata ghatat pataha. It neither can be born from another. So from a ghata, a pata, a cloth cannot be born from a jar or a pot. Okay. Or a piece of cloth cannot be born from another cloth also. Any which way, if you look at it, if you look at inert objects, okay, so right now he is considering only inert objects. Let's consider only the material cause. Okay, let's forget for now the Chetana Vastu. Here the examples which are taken is Ghata Pata and all that. So you cannot say one Ghata is born from itself, nor a Ghata can be born from Pata, or a Pata can be born from Pata, or Ghata Pata together can give rise to another Pata or Ghata is also not possible. That's what he says. Na tata na ubhayataha virodhatyata ghatapatabhyam ghataha patovana jayate. Not by combining Ghata and Pata, you won't get another Ghata or Pata. So because there is a virodha. But the question he asks is, Mridaha Ghataha Jayatehi Pituscha Putraha. But see, you are taking example like from the pot itself, another pot cannot be born. From a cloth, another cloth cannot be born. From a pot, a cloth can't be born. From a cloth, pot cannot be born. So these you can say. But then there are other examples. Like what? From a father, a son is born. From a clay jar is born or a pot is born. Okay, is there not a birth like that? That kind of a birth is what we are talking about, is where Purvapakshi is saying there is a Karya Karana Bhava there. But that also, like I said, is only modification, right? There is no real birth. That birth is as though birth only. Okay, pot being born of clay is no birth at all. Okay, at least you can look at father and son as a birth, but even there also it is a part of the father is individually developing into a child. Okay, that is there even in the case of plants and all that. See, that alone we can probably consider it as a birth relatively, because there is a separate Chetana Vastu which is actually coming up, right? Which was not there earlier. Okay, so that alone we need to address here. So the Gatapada and all is very straightforward. It's only Parinama. There is no real birth. Okay, therefore, he says Nanu Mridaha Gataha Jayate Pituscha Putraha. Okay, then he says Satyam Asti Jayate iti Pratyayaha Shabdascha Mudhanam. Okay. So this can, that is why I am saying this cannot be dismissed straight away, because there is a child which is born from a father. Okay. And it is a separate conscious entity. Therefore, now we have to shift it to the real Swarupa of both the father and the child. Okay, just like the Swarupa of Gata and lid and all that is only clay, the Swarupa of everything is only Chaitanya. So only if you look at that perspective, then this can be addressed. Otherwise, a child being born from the father cannot be addressed as saying that like a pot being born from pot. Okay, these two are very different. That's why Bhashyakara now looks at it from Vacharambana Shruti. Okay. Mudha only, people who are ignorant, for them you can see a birth there. That's what he says. Asti jayate iti pratyayaha shabdaha cha mudhanam. The Laukikavadis who don't have the Swarupa Jnana, for them, yes, you can consider Pituhu Putraha, can be considered. Okay. Even a Gata born from Mrit also is some kind of a birth, because there is a tangible change in the Namarupa. See, one pot cannot be born from another pot is a fact. Okay, but a pot gone will cannot be born from a clay is only a relative fact if you consider that Namarupa is Mithya. Otherwise, you can always say a clayey lump has become a clayey pot, right? So there is some kind of a birth there, because there is a change in Namarupa, change in shape. So therefore, there you can still admit a certain birth, even though it is not like a Pituscha Putra, but still you can still admit some kind of a birth. Therefore, you have to now look at it from Surupa perspective to really address this. That's why Bhashyakara says, yes, Satyam. Yes, in a relative empirical world, we need to admit that there is a pratyaya and a shabda, that like there is a birth. Okay, there is some kind of a recognition of birth, because there is a vritti which is making you see a birth there. Whereas the jnanis don't see that. Tau eva tu shabda pratyayau vivekibihi parikshete. Then when you analyze, so here pariksha comes into picture. Okay. Ghatat gataha, patat pataha, gatapatat gatapataha is not a problem. You don't need any pariksha. Yeah, directly you can dismiss. But in the case of mridaha gataha and pituscha putraha, there is a viveka which is needed. Therefore, Bhashyakara says that shabda pratyaya, when vivek is people who can discriminate what is real and what is unreal, for them satyameva tau uta mrisha iti parikshete. When they do an analysis whether it is really a birth or it is only mrisha, only an appearance, yavata parikshyamane shabda pratyaya vishayam vastu घटपुत्रादि लक्षणम शब्दमात्रमेव तत्. When you really see, ghata is just a shabda. There is no real ghata. In the case of ghata, it is straightforward because there is only clay, even as an external object. Now, if you look at from the content of even the content of mrit is also prajnapti alone. Content of putra as well as pita are both prajnapti alone. Therefore, you have to say shabdamatrameva. It's only word. Vacharambanam iti shrutehe. In fact, after two verses, the Karikakara as well as Bhashyakara are going to discuss the Buddhist, Buddha. Okay. So here, Bhashyakara says these verses from 22 to 26, he says, are being used in the context of what the Buddhas are using. Okay, here he says, see, Vijnanavadinaha Bauddhasya Vachanam Bhahyartavadi Paksha Pratisheda Param is going to, the next three verses are going to be used by the Karikakara to actually use the Buddhist perspective to dismiss the Dvaita Prapancha. Okay, the Buddhists say it is all only mind. But mind is real, is born. Whereas objects are not born because objects are never seen separate from the mind. Okay, so for them, objects are not there, whereas mind is real, not born. Okay, he uses the same logic of Buddhas to dismiss Dvaita, and then finally in the next verse, after the three verses, he dismisses even the mind by using the same logic that Vijnanavadins are using to show that mind also is not real. Okay, so he's going to do that. So therefore, the shift is already starting here. That's why Bhashyakara also, in this verse itself, he is now shifting from, see, right now we were just looking at the objective world and then saying, oh, hey, there is no Karya Karana, looking things outside, okay, as though outside, right? Now we have to fuse the subject object. There is no outside. You have to look at the whole thing together. Then you actually see that the fact that nothing is separate from the Prajnapti. Okay, therefore, the Vacharambana Shruti also he brings in here, saying Vacharambanam iti Shrutehe. The Shabda Pratyaya Vishayam Vastu Ghataputradi Lakshanam Shabdamatrameva Tate Vacharambanam iti Shrutehe. Sat chet na jayate satvat mrit pitraadivati. Okay. If it is sat, then it cannot be born because it is already there. Mrit, you have to say already there. Pita also already there with reference to Ghata and Putra. There is always a pita. See, whenever you have to say there is a birth, there is always, it presupposes a pita there. So therefore the sattvam has to be presumed. Okay, so that cannot be born. यदि असत् तथापि न जायते असत्वादेव ससविषाणादिवत्. Like if it is non-existent rabbit's horn, then also birth is not possible. Okay, so the Mrit is not born, Pita is not born. So you have to only say Gata is born, Putra is born. Okay, and that Gata and Putra are nothing but a parinama of the existing Mrit and Pita only, in a sense. Okay, but Pita is different from Putra when Putra is born, that we all know. But still, from a Stula perspective, it is only a modification of the food, right? Ata sadasad tathapi na jayate viruddhasya ekasya asambhavat. अतः न किंचित् वस्तु जायते इति सिद्धम्. येषां पुनः जनिरेव जायते इति क्रियाकारकफल एकत्वम् अभ्युपगम्यते गम्यते क्षणिकत्वं च वस्तुनः ते दूरतः एव न्यायापेताः. Therefore, Bhashyakara is now slowly bringing in the Kshanika Vijnanavadis here because he is giving that connection to the next verses. Okay. So if the thing is both sad as well as asad, okay, then they are both existence and non-existence. Then also they cannot give birth because this is a very contradictory. A contradictory birth, existent and non-existent cannot come together. They are mutually opposed anyway. So that cannot give birth to another thing. So we can say that na kinchid vastu na jayate. Therefore, a birth itself cannot be established. Nothing whatsoever is born. Now for those yesham punaha janireva jayate iti. Okay, for those who say the birth itself is born only, the very fact that the birth is spoken, that itself means there is a creation. Okay, because there is a cause effect which is actually there is a karanatvam, there is a karyatvam. Okay, and together they form one entity. Okay, that's what he says. This is the Vijnanavadis. Okay, punaha janireva jayate iti kriya karaka pala ekatvam. The kriya, the action of birth, the karakam, all the aspects which are linked with the birth. Okay, and pala, the effect, all of them are together one reality which is actually called the birth. Okay, so it's not like there is a separate cause, there is a separate effect, and then there is a process of birth. All together is the birth, like in the case of the Kshanika Vijnanavadi. Like, let's take the dream. Okay, in the case of dream, there is a birth. Let's say a cow is giving birth to a calf in the dream. So all that is part of the same dream. But then there is the fact that the dream is there where a birth is seen itself together is a birth. Okay, that is how the Kshanika Vijnani talks. Okay, they say like the dream, so too in the waken, all the changes that you are seeing, okay, they are all part of the mind. The mind is the one which is actually is in the form of all the changes which are going on, and that itself is a birth only. Okay, kriya karaka pala ekatvam abhyupagamyate kshanikatvam cha vastunaha. So for them everything is mind only. There is nothing apart from the mind, but they are momentary and they are also in a way born. Okay, because as the cause effect and act of birth together, it is all born, is what they say. But then Bhashyakara says they are nyayapetaha. There is no reason, logic for this. Durataha eva nyayapetaha. Idam itham iti avadharana kshanantara anavasthanat ananubhutasya smriti anupapattescha. See, this is the logic for this. We used to dismiss the Kshanika Vijnana. Because if everything is Kshanikam, Kshanikam means what? It's momentary. Okay, at this moment you perceive something, that is the reality. So this moment alone is real, okay, for this moment. And then next moment is that moment. So there is no connection. It's all only Shunya actually underneath. but there are flickers of consciousness. That is what they say. Now, idam will cease to exist. Idam iti avadharana kshanantara anavasthana. See, if it is all kshanika, okay, it is only flicker of consciousness, momentary perceptions, then between one moment and another moment, what is the connectivity? How will you say this is what it is? How this is the nature of this? How can you say this is in this form? For you to say this, then there should be a memory of what has gone past. Okay, so the cognition itself will become very scattered. Therefore, you won't be able to ananubhutasya smriti anupapattehe. So you won't even be able to link the previous moment and this moment, because because these are two discretes. See, there is one discrete cognition, and then another discrete cognition, another discrete cognition. So that is Kshanika Vijnana. Kshanam, the Vijnanam is Kshanikam. For one Kshana only there is a Vijnanam, there is a perception. And then there is a break. Then there is a next Kshana. Okay, if that is what, that's what they imply. Therefore, there is no continuous reality, it's only Shunya. Once that Kshana is gone, nothing exists. That's what they say. Now, if that Kshana is for you to attain, then moksha, you attain the Shunyatva by dismissing this Kshana. Okay, that is their concept of moksha. Now, if this is true, okay, because for them this Kshana, that perception is true, right? That in that moment there is a world perceived, okay, and that is true. And then there is another Kshana in which there is a world perceived, that is also true. Now, if that is the case, then how does the continuity get established? Okay, where is the continuum? From this Kshana to another Kshana, what is the link? Only if there is a link, there can be a smriti, memory, right? In the previous kshana, the something has to be, some thread has to be there between the two for you to say, at least I need to exist, witnessing both the kshanas, right? Then I can say, in this kshana, I experience this, and right now in the kshana, I am experiencing something else. Therefore, that memory and the person kshana can be tied together by me as the witnesser. But for a kshanika vijnani, I am also part of that kshana only. You have to understand, okay? I am not separate from that kshana as an independent witness. That's not what they are saying. Me as an entity also is part of that kshana. That means that kshana person and this kshana person, there is no connection. There is no person. Okay, there is only the kshana. That kshanakya vijnanam alone is there, which includes the vijnanam of me and non-me also. Okay. If that is the case, then what is the connectivity between each of these kshanas? There is nothing to connect them. Therefore, smriti is not possible. And you cannot also establish anything as this is a cow. You cannot say, because for you to say this is a cow, you should have a remembrance of the cow perception before. Okay, then only you can say this is a cow. Therefore, this idam ittam iti avadharanam is kshanantara anavasthana. So that even though right now, let's say you recognize this is a cow, but in the next kshana, it is a new you, right? Because there is no memory that is passed on. Then the same cow, you have to again understand that this is the cow in that kshana, because the previous recognition that this is a cow is not passed on. So every kshana becomes new. So that's not how the world experience is, right? So because that is not how the world experiences, it is illogical what they are saying, is what he says. Durataha eva nyaya apetaha. They are like very far away from any kind of logic. Okay, it doesn't hold water. At least Dvaita, you can have an argument. But with this kind of Shunyavadi, it doesn't it's a very simple thing, right? It doesn't hold. I don't know how they can build a huge philosophy around this, because this is a basic thing. It contradicts your norm. At least Dvaiti can say that, okay, it is commensurate to my worldly experience. I see. In fact, he's going to say, the unless there is a nanatva prapancha, How can you experience a Nana Prabanja? That at least there is a logical argument there which we can at least take forward. But in this case, if you say Kshanikam Vijnanam, it doesn't even explain the basic experience of the world. Okay, therefore, he right away dismisses saying Te Durataha eva Nyaya Petaha. So the Buddhists are like not even seriously considered by Bhashyakara. Why I am saying this is because today people are abusing, the Dvaitis are abusing Shankaracharya as Prachanna Bahuddha and all that. So there is no logic in saying that. Okay. हेतुर्न जायते अनादेः फलं चापि स्वभावतः आदिर्न विद्यते यस्य तस्य ह्यादिर्न विद्यते. Okay. So here the one adi is different from another adi. Okay. Adir na vidyate is means karana is not there. Okay. Hetuhu na jayate anadehe. Okay. The one for which there is no adi, and that from that phala. Here phalam is actually phalat. Bhashyakara takes it as हेतुपलयोः अनादित्वम् अभ्युपगच्छता त्वया बलात् हेतुपलयोः जन्म एव जन्म एव अभ्युपगतं स्यात् कथम् अनादेः आदिरहितात् फलात् हेतुः. Therefore here the phalam is taken as phalat, न जायते हेतुः अनादेः फलात्. Okay, from the phala which is not having any cause, which is beginningless. When the effect, from the effect a cause cannot be born, was already discussed. And especially in this you are saying it is anadi hetupala. The other option, see, if there is no if you don't accept this gatat pataha patat gataha, the other argument that you can give is this hetupalatvam is anadi. There is a indefinite cycle of creation. Okay, there is cycle of birth is always there. That is what we say, no? From the egg, chicken is born, and from hen, egg comes out. From a father, son comes. From a son, actually, from the son, another son only comes. Okay, it is not. There is no cycle. Even though we say from egg, chicken is born, and from that hen comes, and from hen again egg comes. It is not the same egg. It is another egg only, right? So there is no cycle or anything like that. But there is the anaditvam of hetubala together is being spoken about. See, that is why it is little confusing here, because we keep saying that from egg to hen, hen to egg and all. We think it is a cyclic process. It is not cyclic process. Okay, it is still only a sequential stuff. So najayate anadehe palam. Anadehe palat hetuhu najayate. That's why. So from the effect which is without beginning, a cause cannot be born, nor swabhavataha. Okay, napi swabhavataha. It is not, effect is born, effect cannot be born of itself also. Okay, so the hetu cannot be born of palam, nor palam can be born of palam itself. Okay, therefore na vidyate adihi yasya tasya adihi na vidyate. For the karanavataha eva adi abhyupagatat. See, akaranavataha adihi na vidyate. That's what he takes. The first adihi is taken as karanam. For the one which has no karanam, you cannot say it has a beginning. Is what is this verse? Okay, let's look at Bhashya. Kincha hetu palayoho अनादित्वम् अभ्युपगच्छता त्वया बलात् हेतुबलयोः अजन्म एव अभ्युपगतं स्यात्. So the hetupala, when you take up as without beginning, you are in effect saying they are unborn. Both of them are unborn. If you take hetu and pala as anadi, okay, so hetu is also anadi, pala is also anadi. If that is what you take, That's why I said nothing. Why do you? How can you take they are anadi? You can take it if you think it is cyclical. Okay, but it is actually not cyclical. Only notionally you think, because you categorize somebody as father and something as a child, or categorize something as an egg and something as hen. You can say from hen egg is born, from egg hen is born. Okay, then you take that whole cycle as anadi. But that is not anadi, no. So you have to say every hen should exist all the time, and every egg also should exist all the time. Then you can say it is anadi. So otherwise, it is Adimat only. No, this hen that you are seeing today, it had a karanam in the form of egg. Okay, so that Anaditvam also is in effect saying without janma. Okay, if you really take, that's what he says. Hetu balayoho anaditvam abhibhagachata tvaya balat hetu balayoho ajanma eva abhibhagatam syat. Okay, katam anadehe adirahitat palat. The pala, let's say, was already there. If the pala is already there, then you cannot say hetu is born of that pala, because that hetu also should already be there for this pala to have come. Therefore, you cannot say. The other option then is anutpannat anadehe. Suppose you say anadi means anutpanna, it is not born at all. Okay, that palat also, if it is unborn pala, from that also the hetu cannot be born. Palam also cannot be born. Why? Because adi rahitat anadehe hetoho ajat swabhavataha eva nirnimittam jayate iti na abhyupagamyate. So this birth itself is a very, because the karana karya is not establishable. Only parinama is establishable even in the objective world. Okay, tasmad anaditvam abhyupagachyata tvaya हेतुपलयोः अजन्मा एव अभ्युपगम्यते यस्मात् आदिः कारणं न विद्यते यस्य लोके तस्य हि आदिः पूर्वोक्ता जातिः न विद्यते. Okay, therefore the karanatvam is not establishable. Therefore adi also is not establishable. The birth is not establishable. Karanavataha eva adihi abhyupagamyate na akaranavataha. So if there is no karanam, birth is not establishable. Okay. Now coming to this Prajnaptivada, the Bauddha thing, right? It starts here. Prajnaptehe sanimittattvam anyata dvayanashatah sankleshasya upalabdhescha paratantrastita mata. This is actually a Purva Paksha verse. Okay. The Purva Pakshi is questioning the established knowledge, a rooted knowledge. Okay. So, prajnaptehe sanimittattvam anyata dvayanaşatah. The prajnapti here actually means the knowledge of the objective world. Okay. The duality, the subjective experience that is there of, let's say, there is a cat outside or a elephant outside, and the elephant also has legs, four legs, one tail. All these things means there is a nanatva prapancha. Okay, and this nanatva prapancha means there is a subjective impression of the world. Okay, that is not possible unless there is an object outside, is what the Purvapakshi is saying. Prajnaptehe sannimittatvam ishyate. It needs to have some object. It is, you cannot say just your mind alone is creating that. And also everybody is seeing the elephant the same way. That is also there. So sanimittattvam ishyate, only if there is a nimitta of some appearance of elephant, then only you can see an elephant. Without a nimitta, how can you see an elephant? So sanimittattvam ishyate yukti darshanat. Okay. So there is Gaudapada also here. Dvayanashataha. That is the other one, right? Okay. Yeah. Prajnaptehe sanimitatvam. This is an objection, right? So, Purvapaksha, sanimitatvam anyata dvayanashataha. So, otherwise, both will be non existent. So, unless there is a nimitta of the subjective world, okay, without that nimittatvam, both the elephant that you perceive and the cause, both of them will be non-existent. You won't be able to see it. Okay. And also sankleshasya upalabdescha, and the pain and all that is also experienced. So when there is a fire which burns you, you feel the heat. Okay. So unless there is an external fire, how can you feel the heat? Okay. And somebody else who is not touching the fire is not feeling the heat. Therefore, existence of external object, paratantra, astita, has to be accepted. Okay. Because sanklesya upalabdhi. Sanklesha means any kind of affliction, like pain and all that. Okay. That only, because pleasure also it's the same, but pain means you can relate, right? Unless there is something you won't experience it. Therefore, you have to accept that the external objects exist. This is the Purvapaksha is asking this. So let's see the Bhashya. Uktasya eva arthasya dridīkarana chikirshaya punaha akshipati. In order to strengthen the uh, the vision that has already been stated, there is this akshepa is again raised. Dridīkarana chikirshaya, kartumichaya. With the wishing to do the dridīkaranam, strengthening, firmly rooting Uktasya Vartasya, whatever is already the vision that is already unfolded, that there is nothing called birth. For that only Punaha Akshipati, he raises an objection again. What is the Akshepa? Prajnanam Prajnaptihi, Shabdadi Pratiti. Okay, here Prajnanam is not our Chinmatra Parambrahma. Okay, here the word Prajnapti is used for the very clear knowledge of the external things, right? The Shabdadi Pratitihi, the sound, light, then the touch, everything, right? The Pancha Indriya Vishaya and the combination, right? These are not individually. Shabda means Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha, but it also means the Shabdadi Vishayas. Okay, so whatever is perceived as the external object of perception, that is Prajnapti, very clearly seen. Tasyaha Sanimittatvam. They all have a reason, otherwise you can't perceive it. There is something called elephant which is outside, that is a nimitta, because of which your mind is perceiving the elephant. Okay, that's Sanimittatvam, Nimittam Karanam Vishayaha iti etate. Here Nimitta means Vishaya. Okay, that is the Karana, because of which the perception is happening. Sanimittatvam Savishayatvam Swatma Vetirikta Vishaya Ta iti etate Pratijanimahe. They are outside of me. Swatma Vetirikta Vishayata. So not me. Okay, whatever is outside of me has to be there for me to experience these kind of Nanatva Jagat. Okay, that has to be there. Nahi nirvishaya prajnaptihi shabdadi pratitihi syat. Without the objects like elephant and tiger and chief minister and prime minister and president of United States, such entities existing, I cannot have those experiences. So all your Advaitam and all is all bunkam. Okay, because these are have to be there, then only I can experience. You cannot just say everything is mind. Okay. So what he says, Tasya Sanimittatvat Anyata Nirvishayatve Sabdasparsha Neelapita Lohitadi Pratyaya Vaichitriyasya Dvayasya Nashataha nashaha abhavaha prasajyeta ityartaha. In the absence of this experience, nimittatvam, anyata, nirvishayatve, if there is no vishaya, real vishaya, then your sabda sparsha, you have different kind of sparsha and sabda, and like what Neela, this is blue, this is Pita, this is yellow, this is Lohita, this is strong like iron, whatever. Adi Pratyaya Vaikitriyasya, this there is a diverse nature of perception. Okay, Dvayasya Nashaha, Nashataha, Nashaha, Bhavaha, Prasajyeta, all these will become absent. Okay, they shouldn't have existed. The multiplicity of experience would not have, varieties of experience wouldn't have existed, because it's not like a ekarasa, it's not like a deep sleep where everything is like one way. There are thousands. I mean, he has given example Nila Pita and all that, right? But actually, there are zillions of experiences which are there. Not just colors and all. There are life forms. There are living beings. There are inert objects, and then galaxies and planets, and we don't even know what else we don't know. Okay, such so many varieties are there. These are not, all this cannot be just nirnimitta. न च प्रत्ययवैचित्र्यस्य द्वयस्य अभावः अस्ति प्रत्यक्षत्वात्. So this is the typical Dvaiti's argument also, right? They say, how you are seeing a tangible world, how can you say this is all Maya? Nobody says it is all Maya. They think we say everything is illusion. Okay, like a magic. Mayavadi, they call. They think it's Maya means it's magic. It's purely, you are delusional. You guys are delusional when you say everything is Advaitam. That's what they think. Because we are dismissing everything as Maya, even though it is tangibly seen. Okay, that is the same. It's the same Dvaitis. The today's Dvaitis, whatever argument is, it is the same thing that is being raised here and already addressed, and it is addressed by Mayavadi. See, that is, I think, the connection between why these people call Advaitins as Mayavadin. Because if you see the sequence of how this is picked up, the presentation here, the Purva Paksha is Dvaiti's Purva Paksha. This Dvaiti are not Madhva Dvaiti of today, but the Vaiseshika Nayayikas, Sankyas, all these people are Dvaitins only. And most of Nayayika Vada only, Nyaya Shastra is accepted, most of it by today's Dvaitis also. Even though the Patanjala Kanada are common for everybody, but we use Nyaya only to a certain extent, for certain, and that too not elaborately. Whereas the Madhva Dvaitins, they use Nyaya Shastra. Okay. Anyway, coming to the sequence in which this is being addressed. So this Purva Paksha is the Dvaitavada, and then the next 2-3 verses, the Karikakara Acharya uses the Vijnanavadins Buddhist argument to dismiss the Dvaitavada, because he says, the Vijnanavadin says, it is not possible for you to establish an object without it being evident in the mind. Okay, so which means there is no tangible object. If you actually analyze, all that is there is only mind, is what they say. And we don't contest that part. Okay, we accept that because it's a fact. You cannot separate the mind and the perception from whatever you see as object. Okay, now then we go one step ahead and then say even this mind also is not establishable. Okay, therefore we say only Sadvastu alone is there. So that is the order in which, like Amit Shah says, right? uh, yeah, he says understand the sequence, right? When I think it's a very famous video where he talks about that NRC and that one. right? Chronology samajna, that kind of a thing, right? So this is the order in which we dismiss this. Therefore, they think that we accept the Buddhist and they call us, we are aligned to the Buddhists. Actually, no. In fact, Shankaracharya here, he clearly dismisses Buddha in a big way. He says it's totally illogical. But then that part where they, just the fact that things are not separate from the mind, that alone we do accept. Only the Kshanikatvam we don't accept. And Shunya as the reality, we don't agree to that because that is illogical. Anyway, coming to this, so they say the Dvaita Nasha, it is Pratyaya Vaichitriyasya Dvayasya Abhavaha Asti Pratyakshatva. So there is a Pratyaksha, you are seeing elephant and your mind is also perceiving it. There are so many things which are perceived. Unless there are these tangible manifesting outside, this mind cannot see all of it, right? The Vichitra Pratyaya has to be there. That Vaichitriyatvam is should be there. And for it to be there, that object should be there. Then only your mind is able to perceive it. Ataha Pratyaya Vaichitriyasya Dvayasya Darshanat Paresham Tantram Paratantramiti अन्यशास्त्रं तस्य परतन्त्रस्य परतन्त्राश्रयस्य तन्त्राश्रयस्य बाह्यार्थस्य प्रज्ञानव्यतिरिक्तस्य अस्तिता मता अभिभ्रेदा. The abhipraya of the Dvaitins is the Pratyaya Vaichitriya, this rainbow nature of your worldly experience, the Nanatva Pratyaya is evidently there. And there is a paresham tantram paratantram. Okay, the external dependence. It's a subjective knowledge. Okay. And it is a manifest jagat. Okay, and it is being revealed to you. Therefore, all these things cannot be explained by just imagining that the entire subjective knowledge is only in your mind. That cannot be accepted. Okay, therefore you need to accept the reality of it, is what he says. Paresham tantram paratantram iti anya shastram. Okay, the other Dvaitins philosophies have to be really looked at. Okay. Bahyartha is paratantra. The whatever your mind is seeing is dependent on what is being revealed to you. Correct? An elephant has to come, then only you can see the elephant. Your mind can see that elephant. Okay. So there is a paratantriyam, paratantrata is there. And prajnapti vetiriktasya astita mata. And it is also prajnana vyatirikta. It is other than what your mind itself, right? It is outside, therefore you are seeing. Nahi prajnaptehe prakasha matra swarupayaha neelapitadi bahyalambana vaichitriyam antarena swabhava bhedena etad vaichitriyam sambhavati. If it is just the mind, how can all this be possible? We are talking about Saturn. We are talking about other galaxies. We are one is in this Milky Way itself. Other than solar system, there are many systems, and each of the systems has many planets. And then other than this Milky Way galaxy, there are other galaxies. All this you can't say just your mind. Okay, how can you say that? So this unless these are there outside, this Vichitra experience is not possible. And he says Patikasya iva नीलादि उपाधि आश्रयैः विना वैचित्रं न घटतः इति अभिप्रायः. Even for a spatika, if it has to see vichitra thing in a spatika, the very colorful, beautiful, uh, refractions, whatever, you need to have Niladi Upadi. You need to have those colored objects abetting the Spatika crystal. The crystal needs to have a certain kind of adjuncts for it to reflect different colors. Therefore, it is, you cannot say crystal alone is there, Suddha Chaitanyam only is there, and all that. That is their point of view. Itascha paratantashrayasya bahyartasya jnana vyatiriktasya astita. Sankleshanam sankleshaha dukkham. The other thing is things like pain. Sankleshaha. Upalabhyate hi agnidahadi nimittam dukkham. When the fire hits you, you are getting hurt. That is also there. How can you say it doesn't exist? यदि अग्न्यादि बाह्यम दाहादि निमित्तं विज्ञान व्यतिरिक्तं न स्यात् ततः दाहादि दुःखं न उपलभ्येत. So if there were no heat, you wouldn't have felt the hot sun. Upalabhyate tu. So you are feeling the heat. Ataha tena manyamahe asti bahyah artaha iti. Therefore, external things should be there. Nahi vijnana matre sankleshaha yuktaha. Anyatra adarjanat iti abhiprayah. Therefore, you cannot say without external things. These are all pure vijnana only, is the contention. Now he addresses it from the standpoint of the vijnanavadi. Okay, prajnaptehe sanimittattvam ishyate yukti darshanat. Nimittasya animittatvam ishyate bhuta darshanat. Okay, now it is being addressed by this prajnapti from the sanimittatvam. There needs to be a subjective cause, correct, from the vyavaharika perspective, purely logical reasoning perspective. However, if you look at the reality standpoint, nimittasya animittatvam bhuta darshanat ishyate. Okay, if you look at what is the reality, see what is from purely the impression perspective. That is why you have to admit the mithyatvam. Only from the we are not talking about perception perspective, but we are only talking from reality perspective. Okay, what is seen versus what is there. Okay, so it's like the dream experience we are not dismissing, but the reality of the entities in the dream is what we are talking about. Okay. That there is a perception of dream, we have no problem. But whether it is real or not is where we have a point of view. Okay, we say the dream is not real, like you also. Similarly, we also say the reality of the waken is only the same Brahma, as the reality of dream also is the same Brahman. You accept that reality of dream is the Brahman, which is the Swarupa only. And what is that Swarupa? There is a contention because you are looking at it from the Vakan perspective. But we see the fact that both the dream as well as the Vakan state are pivoted on the Swarupa, which is Prajnapti alone. Okay, so from that Bhuta Darshanat, from what is perspective, the nimitta becomes animitta. Okay, in fact, that is uh, one way he is taking. The other way, Bhashyakara takes it as abhuta darshanat, because that you can split it like that. Nimittasya animittatvam ishyate abhuta darshanat also. And abhuta darshanat means non-existence. Because there is a non-existence, there is a nirnimittatvam. Okay, so both interpretations he takes. Okay. I mean, more or less similar meanings, but he takes the verse in both ways. So we'll see the answer to the Purva Paksha in the next session. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ओम शांति 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 हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು.
धन्यवादः।